One of the things at CES was last night, Jensen gave his big keynote, aka Tech Taylor Swift, right? Like, the second they announced him and like he was walking out on the stage, people were like standing and cheering and screaming. In my opinion, the bigger news and the things with the bigger implications of the AI world are project digits or just digits. You're going to have a model that's good enough to do anything you want.
So you're saying that basically Nvidia is going to be the big player, not OpenAI.
Hey, welcome to the Next Wave podcast. I'm Matt Wolf. I'm here with Nathan Lands, and I am reporting into this episode from CES in Las Vegas. In this episode, we're going to deep dive into the future of AI as we're sort of seeing it unfold here at CES this year. We hear a lot about these companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and all of the big, massive companies building AI. But is the big winner the company that everybody's really going to remember when it comes to AI in the future? Is it really going to be Nvidia? Well, that's what we're going to discuss in this episode, because I'm spending a ton of time with Nvidia out here learning what they're up to. They just put on a massive keynote where they dropped some huge announcements. We're going to get into all of that, as well as some of the coolest tech I've come across at CES and my overall thoughts on CES. And Nathan and I, we're just going to nerd out on this one with you. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. I think maybe where we should start is probably the whole Sam Altman thing, because that kind of came out like right before I got to CES, right? He put out a blog post and essentially said, we know how to get to AGI. Like we've got a path to it. We know we're going to hit AGI. It's going to be 2025 that we hit AGI. Our new mission is ASI. So I actually haven't read the blog post yet. I've just been in conversation with other people who have read it. I'm assuming, Nathan, maybe you did read the blog post, so you have a little more insight.
He basically makes it sound like AGI is no longer a big deal. Like, we definitely know how to reach AGI. Depending on your definition, maybe it's coming or has already come or will be coming very soon. Yeah. He also talks about, not really a prediction, he basically said that he believes that in 2025, we are going to have agents that do meaningful work in organizations. And he thinks that's going to be a huge turning point with AGI and for AI in general. We've been hearing rumors of that, but it sounds like they must have some kind of examples of that actually working, of like agents going off and doing meaningful work for people. And he talked about ASI, like, hey, now that we know AGI is like a given, we definitely know how to do that. We need to be aiming for ASI. And he didn't say that they know completely how to get there, but his confidence of getting there seemed way higher than when he's talked in the past. Right. People on Twitter were like, holy crap. So like, obviously this test time compute stuff with like what O1 going to O3 and how fast that's improved, they must be seeing signals internally that there's no end in sight to those improvements. That's probably what's going on.
Well, it sounds like they know how to get to AGI. Right now, it's probably mostly like an energy cost issue, right? Like we saw with O3, it got these high benchmarks on all of these tests, but to do it, they had to spend thousands of dollars per task. So I think like the real barrier right now is like, okay, maybe they've got AGI internally, but it costs $10,000 per task to do it, which is not feasible for like any individual, much like, and maybe barely any businesses, right? So it's like, I think they do actually know how to get to AGI. I think AGI is probably more on the inference side, right? Where it's not really running new trainings, but it's really that ability to like think and double check and triple check and quadruple check its work and then give you its answer on the inference phase, which is going to get us to AGI. That's sort of the sense that I'm getting from it all.
With ASI, he's talking about like, solving cancer and like environmental issues and just any kind of problem humanity has, having almost like godlike intelligence that can help solve those problems.
To me, it seems like if they can figure out AGI, ASI doesn't feel too far off after that, right? Because like now you have the AGI who's helping you figure out how to get to ASI, right? It's like, at that point, once you have an AGI, you don't necessarily need a whole bunch of humans figuring out how we get to the next phase beyond AGI. You have an AGI that helps you figure out how do we get to the next phase beyond AGI.
I'm just blown away by like what it can do. People have said like Claude's really good for coding, but I've been testing Claude versus O1 Pro a lot. And like, Claude is great for making very minor little changes, but it gets confused so easily. Like if you throw it a large project, it's like, hey, yeah, let's create this new function. It's like, well, I already have this function. Like, why are you making a second one of the same thing? Or it'll be linking things up incorrectly, or all kind of things it'll do because it just gets confused. I have not seen O1 Pro do that once.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't think most people realize, and the fact that OpenAI is saying, oh yeah, and O1 Pro is not even that good. Like we have something already like 5 to 10 times better, and there's no end in sight. It's like I don't think people are processing what that means. Yeah.
But I'm also, so like I mentioned, I'm at CES right now. So if you're watching this on the video, that explains why I'm in a hotel room. But one of the things at CES was last night Jensen gave his big keynote, aka Tech Taylor Swift, right? Like everybody like fangirls out whenever Jensen Huang's in the room. And, the second they announced him and like he was walking out on the stage, people were like standing and cheering and screaming and, flashing them and, no, not that part didn't happen. But you wouldn't
Flash? We're still using Flash memory? Is that what you're...
You wouldn't be surprised if it happened though, right? There are those pictures of Jensen signing a woman's chest. So anyway,
he's a rock star of our generation. Like we don't have many of them. So, he's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he came out, the big thing that everybody at CES was I think the most excited about, because it's the consumer electronics show, was probably the fact that we got these Nvidia RTX 50 series, right? He said that the Nvidia 5070 is just as powerful as the 4090s that you get now. The 4090s cost $1,600 right now. These new 5070s cost $550 and are just as powerful as the 4090s. Supposedly, there's some controversy around that as well. People are saying, it's not necessarily as powerful. It's like close to being as powerful, but then there's some like upscaling that happens on the GPU that the old ones don't have. So it's not quite as good. And there's some additional latency issues. I don't know all of like the technical issues or anything yet, but a lot of people are going, he's claiming it's the same as the 4090s, but it's, if you look at the specs, it's not technically the same. But anyway, that's what most of the people I think were here to hear about. That got like huge cheers. Everybody was excited when they talked about that. The other day, I used ChatGPT to sort through the latest AI news and tell me what order to talk about them in my YouTube videos. And I was honestly surprised at how spot on it was. One of the biggest tips I give to people still building their confidence with ChatGPT is simple. Just start throwing prompts in and see what it can do. Now, to help you get rolling, HubSpot put together a free guide with over 100 prompts you can start messing with right now. Trust me, it's going to help you unlock some serious potential. You can grab it in the link below. Now back to the show. In my opinion, the bigger news and the things with the bigger implications of the AI world are more about the Project Cosmos, I don't know if they call it Project Digits or just Digits.
So Digits, that's the personal computer, is that correct?
That's the personal like supercomputer.
Supercomputer, okay.
I feel like that is kind of a big deal, right? Like that is something that over time, I wonder if that's going to affect, OpenAI's and Anthropic's and Google's business models, right? Because pretty soon anybody can have a computer that's like just as powerful as these cloud computers that a lot of these other companies are running with sitting on their desktop. And if you've got enough money, you can stack them together. And right now they cost $3,000 each, or, whenever they're released. I don't think they're out yet, but when they're released, they're going to be about $3,000 each. And, Nvidia has their own version of like Llama that they fine tuned and optimized to work with their own computers. But it makes me wonder, like, is the future of all of this stuff going to be like the edge computing? Is it going to be like, is it going to skip the cloud? Are people going to even want to use things like OpenAI when they can just have their own box? And right now, yes, they're $3,000, but what are they going to be 2 years from now? Look at what they did with the RTX series. The 4090 is $1,600 to this day. The 5070 is now $550 and supposedly just as powerful. So if these things are $3,000 right now, maybe next year they're $1,500. Maybe the year after that, you have a personal like supercomputer in your house that's $700 that runs models as powerful as ChatGPT. I don't know. So I wonder, like, how does that impact a lot of these big AI companies? I don't know.
You talked about this before about, in the future, are people going to be using something like ChatGPT, or are they going to have the models just running on in their own house? It does feel like that OpenAI will always have the best models. But yeah, you might have for like daily usage that the models get so good and that the compute gets so cheap that you could have your own private one in your house for daily stuff because you really don't want, the other companies just knowing like, oh, I'm talking to the AI all day. Or like they can hear every single thing I'm saying.
To use these little like supercomputers, you don't even need to be connected to the internet, right? You could be like completely offline and just wired into it, and it will run all the inference on there. Maybe someday you'll even be able to like train your own AIs and fine tune on these things as well. So like, I don't know. I feel like that could be more of the future. I mean, I do think OpenAI and, maybe Anthropic and Google, they will always be the more state of the art, the more cutting edge, the furthest along, further than what you can run at your house. But at some point, you get to this level where the model's good enough for everything you want it to do. So do you really need the most cutting edge state of the art model, right? Unless you're like using it for like enterprise, like, unless you have like really, really massive needs where you really want OpenAI or Google or Anthropic or one of these companies sort of like managing it and making sure you're always state of the art, I feel like we're going to get to a point where you're going to have a model that's good enough to do anything you want, run your own AI agents, pretty much anything you need to do, you can do on this computer at your house without actually connecting to one of these cloud companies.
So you're saying that basically Nvidia is going to be the big player, not OpenAI. So that is interesting. So I could imagine a future where, like, 'cause look, for like, it's definitely going to get in the next few years where, like AI voice, like talking to the AI and being able to interact with your calendar and your email system and all this kind of stuff. That's going to be very simple very soon. And so I can imagine you would want all that to be on like a local machine that you're running. And then you probably could even have the AI help kind of manage your privacy in terms of like, okay, I want to keep this information private, but I'm okay with you interacting with ChatGPT for this, because I'm managing all my agents to build various companies or whatever I'm doing with it in 5 years from now. And I want you to help kind of manage what I'm willing to share with it and not. So you have your own like private personal, AI interacting with the more powerful publicly owned or like companies like ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it will get to a point where like the AIs sort of interact with other AIs. I think that's kind of inevitable, right? So it's like maybe your own personal computer will need to like in the same way if you use the new version of Siri that's on the Apple, the iPhone 16 Plus or Pro or whatever, right? Yeah. Like if you use Siri, it's got its own like edge AI on the phone where it can answer questions and do some really basic responding right on the phone. But if it's a little bit more complex of a question, it'll say, can we ask OpenAI? Right. So I think it'll probably be that type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just interesting to think about, like, do a lot of these big AI companies, do they stay really like consumer tools far into the future, or does the consumer stuff move more to these like the hardware that you own at home? I don't know. I feel like Nvidia presented a future where maybe it is more like edge compute, like at home, like you have your own devices.
I guess it's like the question, will people ever care about that?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to prioritize different things, right? Like now, big companies, if they wanted to, they can build their own server farms and run everything locally if they wanted to, or they can, cut costs and run it on the cloud. And if you're running it on the cloud, there are some inherent risks, right? If you lose internet connectivity, do all of your systems go down for the day because you can't access the cloud? Do you know exactly what information your cloud provider is able to see on your stuff, right? There are like issues with the cloud. So it really depends on like what the company or the people are going to prioritize. Us being like techie AI type people, we'll probably always continue to sort of be on the bleeding edge and try it all and use both versions of it to see what can do what. But
I mean, on my use case right now, on how I've been using AI recently, like it kind of fits with the whole idea of having your own private for like just like conversational stuff. And then for like work, have the strongest models. Because like right now, like what I've been doing recently, I've been like, getting really hands-on with AI by like developing this game demo what I'll do is I'll be having O1 Pro generate code like for like new features and things like that. And sometimes it takes it like 5 to 7 minutes. And so while it's doing that, I'm often going to Claude and then sharing like my specs document about my game and then having conversations with it. I use voice, I have a button that like transcribes what I say in voice to text. I'll be sitting there talking and then just like going back and forth on different ideas and updating that specs document while I'm waiting for the code to finish, right? And so I can definitely imagine something like that in the future where like for like daily use, you could have your own private computer, you're chatting with it, but then when you want to do some hard work, maybe you send it off to the super ASI, which may take a minute, may take an hour, if it's something super complicated.
Yeah, and I think, if you're building things like spec sheets and you say like this is how it should perform and this is what this screen should have on it and this is what this screen should have, and when you press this button this is how it should react, and you have all of that kind of stuff, I imagine these AIs are going to be able to test to make sure everything works in its like own virtual environment, which sort of brings me to like the other big thing that Nvidia talked about, which was their project Cosmos. Wasn't really the exact same thing we're talking about here, but they were talking about this project Cosmos as like the the digital twin concept, the sort of virtual world where you can put self-driving cars, or you can put robots or whatever inside of these virtual worlds, test them in the virtual worlds, train them in the virtual worlds, and then once it's working perfectly in these virtual worlds, then you deploy them into the real world, right? And they've already sort of announced that. I was at Nvidia GTC last year, and they were already talking about that as like part of their project Groot and stuff. But I think the new thing about Cosmos, and this was one thing I was a little unclear about. I was talking to somebody after the keynote, and we were kind of confused about like this whole digital twin thing. Jensen's been talking about that for the last year and a half, 2 years now. Like, how is this Cosmos thing that they announced this week different? And the major difference that I noticed was that he was actually entering prompts just like you'd enter a ChatGPT prompt, or just like you'd enter a prompt in like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, to give it scenarios to try, right? So he was like, let's say, for example, putting a self-driving car inside of this virtual environment, and then he was prompting things like, oh, there's a snowstorm and a ball rolls into the street, and what should the car do? Run every possible scenario that the car can do, and let's figure out the optimal scenario, right? They were actually typing prompts into the prompt box to generate different scenarios. And to me, that's really, really interesting. It's like, it goes back to, I mean, there is a Black Mirror episode that kind of does this with like the whole like dating scenario, where it plays out every possible scenario and then finds like the best match for somebody, right? That's essentially what this Cosmos can do in like a self-driving car environment, or robots, or whatever you want to test it with. That's what it can do. You build this environment, it plays out every possible scenario it can imagine, and then gives you the optimal solution for whatever scenario you enter, which is pretty mind-blowing to think about.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what Project Cosmos is doing, and they're open sourcing it. So they literally put it up on GitHub so any companies can go and use it. So
wow.
that's pretty wild as well.
That is wild. Like, I'm imagining too, I'm sitting there like, God, imagine like you're using Claude or ChatGPT or whatever to help generate the prompts. Even like, what are all the things we should test? Because I've been doing that kind of thing with like game development. Like, what are all the things I should test? It can help come up with all those prompts, and so you could have AI actually coming up with all the scenarios. It come up with a million scenarios to test.
Yeah. So. And I mean, coming back to like the game example that you're doing, it's not necessarily like the same sort of virtual environment, but I would imagine it could go and play through your game, run all possible scenarios, and find any potential issues with the game that might need to be fixed, right? Yeah. Think about like a long, like, let's say like a platformer game or something that would typically take somebody 10 hours to beat. What happens if there's a bug in the game that's like 9 hours in that maybe you missed because you didn't hit a certain part of the level and you never spotted that bug? Well, is this going to be able to like preempt any potential bugs that might come out in a game because it can run through every potential scenario of that?
I think it will get that. I think first we'll probably have that. I was actually talking to my wife about this the other day. I was like, play testing for games is going to get really easy soon, or for like any software, it's going to get really easy soon because you'll be able to have like probably through computer use first, if I had to guess, because you'll be able to have like the computer actually interact with the thing, whether it's a game or an application, and test different scenarios, and then see where bugs are, log them, possibly even then look at the code base and like identify the bug and solve it. But I assume at some point you could just simulate the entire thing, like and that's going to be. You can do that for anything. You can do that for architecture. I think you still have
real human game testers, though, right? Because like you still need people to tell you whether the thing's fun or not.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like, is this super fun? It's like
So right now, the day that we're recording this is actually basically the first day of CES. But I did go and sort of speed run the convention center and try to see as much as I can see while I was out there. Some other interesting stuff. I did sit in on a Samsung keynote, and Samsung is all about like smart devices. Some of the stuff that they're talking about feels almost like novelty, like that's cool, but like, are people really going to use it once it's installed in their house, right? Like they had stuff like AI in your refrigerator where it'll take pictures inside of your refrigerator and then recommend things for you to buy based on like AI. It'll be like, oh, it looks like they're running low on eggs or whatever, and it'll let you know when you're running low on things. They have like digital displays on the refrigerators. The example they were giving is you wake up in the morning and while you're making breakfast, you can see right on your refrigerator what the weather's going to be like. And
they've been doing that stuff for like 15 years now.
Some of the examples they were giving, though, was like more of like the agentic style of like it could look in your fridge, see that you're low on eggs, and then send that to Instacart. And then, eggs will just show up at your door without you having to think about it. Right. Yeah. So like that's sort of where some of the AI stuff would play in, is like, oh, they're getting low on milk or they're out of milk. Go ahead and order milk on Instacart and send it. I don't know if you saw that like demo that I did on my live stream where I told Amazon to buy me some toilet paper, and then it racked up $600 worth of toilet paper on my Amazon.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of control system. But like that's what I was saying, like
that's what I worry about with that kind of stuff.
It needs to seamlessly tie into the existing AI systems people are using. So like, for example, if I'm using I'm not using AI voice as much as I expected I would, but I think eventually I will. Like a few more improvements, I think I will. But so eventually, if they could tie into some kind of system like that, and then ChatGPT might say, hey, you have all these notifications you have a notification from your fridge, you have a notification from email of things I think are important or you need to make a decision upon. And then you can kind of through, natural voice, decide upon how you want to deal with things like that. Like, if I need eggs, just freaking get the eggs for me. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
Somebody's asked me to set an appointment. No, I don't like appointments. or whatever it is. Just like deal with all those kind of things and like kind of set the rule set using the AI. I think we're like probably a year or two away from like way more personalization like that. And that kind of stuff can make a lot of sense.
I would say like the CES this year, from what I've seen so far, I haven't even been over to the Venetian Expo yet, which is like a whole other thing, right? The Venetian Expo, they have this thing called Eureka Park, which is only companies that are a year older or newer, right? So that's all the like cutting edge, brand new, like early startups over there. And I haven't seen what's there yet, so I haven't explored that yet. But what I've seen so far has been a lot of like self-driving car tech, tons and tons of self-driving car tech here. And then like Internet of Things blended with AI, right? Taking like the IoT stuff and then adding AI, like the example of, oh, you're out of milk, send that to Instacart, let Instacart order it for you. They had some other examples of like a Samsung 2-in-1 washer and dryer, and it could like automatically sense how dry your clothes are and then like make it wash for longer if they were still wet, or I don't even remember some of the examples they gave, but like
mine in Japan already does that. Don't they already do that in America? Like mine in Japan already does all that.
Yeah, there's like some other AI elements to it where you can like communicate through like Siri or whatever, or like your Amazon Alexa or things like that to like tell it to do stuff, and it's all connected. I did watch the Samsung keynote, but you can tell how impactful it was because I'm already forgetting some of the stuff that they were telling us during it. But it was a lot of that kind of stuff. It was a lot of like smart washer and dryers, smart refrigerators, smart lighting systems. They were talking about systems that control like your heating and air. They noticed like maybe at night you're wearing like your Samsung Galaxy ring and it notices that you're like really, really hot. So it'll like actually turn up the AC for you. And like the idea is less and less like prompting and asking AI to do things, and AI just sort of figuring out what it needs to do and do it for you. Right. Like I think that's where they're trying to go with a lot of the Internet of Things stuff combined with AI is it, instead of me telling these things what they should do next, AI will recognize, okay, in the past, he did it this way, so let's make sure we do it that way again. Or, he's looking really hot while he's sleeping. Let's turn on the AC for him. You have smart blinds and you set an alarm for 8:30 and it raises your blinds for you at 8:30. Pretty sure you can already do that. I don't think
different lighting modes would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, you like dim lights at certain times or.
Yeah. It's all like Internet of Things combined with AI, but the idea is they want it to be more preemptive. They want it to be more, you don't have to go and tell these various things what to do. They just know what to do next and give you the results you're looking for without you having to go and ask it to do that. Right. So there's been a lot of that kind of stuff.
I think you need the automatic stuff with the ability through natural language to modify how those things behave. Is what I think. I think it's all automatic. People are just going to like, some people are going to hate that. It's like, I want some amount of control over it a bit more, how I can tweak it. And then just make that. So I wonder how that's going to work if you'll be able to do that with like ChatGPT and stuff at some point. So that'd be really cool. If you could just interact with voice and control all the stuff in your house and like, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think a lot of it the way I felt about it sitting through some of these keynotes is I came out of the keynotes going, that's really, really cool tech. I think it's really, really impressive that we're at a point where we can do that stuff now. Other than that, do I really care that much? Do I really feel like it's going to impact my life that much? Do I really like want to go and buy the latest state-of-the-art washer and dryer combo or a fridge with a giant 30-inch screen on it? Not really. Like, I'm not sold myself yet, but I am impressed.
Right.
And that's kind of how I feel about a lot of what I'm seeing at CES this year is I'm like, wow, that's really, really impressive. Do I want one? Not yet, but it's impressive.
I'm okay with all that stuff as long as we don't have any kind of oppressive government that's like, hey, you have a point system and you don't have enough points. Sorry, we don't like what you said on social media, so you can't really. You can't wash your clothes this week. I'm sorry, but like there's a penalty to like
Yeah. We've locked your fridge and you can't eat until you get your credit score up.
Yes, you must say something good about the current president. Otherwise, you're gonna starve. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is.
Yeah. But I don't know. Like I'm gonna do some more exploring. I actually encourage people to check out like the Nvidia keynote. It's really long. I mean, it was like, I think his keynote went on for almost 2 hours. I actually ended up leaving early because I had to be at another event. So I left like 5 minutes before the keynote was over. But the Samsung keynote was really, really interesting. They did show like a lot of examples of how this stuff will like all tie together and how, it's going to try to preempt what your needs are before you even prompt it. So I think that's where a lot of the things are going this year. Last year, there was a lot of like really cool, like TV tech, like some really cool, like electronic stuff. And this year, like it was like, I haven't seen like really insane TVs this year. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I haven't really seen much yet. All I've seen is like bigger TVs, right? I saw like 127-inch, like OLED 8K TV or something that looks really impressive when it's right in front of you, but it's probably like a $60,000 TV or something. Last year they had like these transparent TVs that were really cool to see. Not really a lot of use cases for like in the home, but really interesting for like businesses. Like you can actually replace, like some of the examples they showed last year was you can have like a display case with like all of your pastries in it. And then like on the display in front of it, it's actually got like digital labels of what each thing is. And you can play like animations in front, like on the display case. So it's almost like using these clear TVs as your display case. And I thought that was really cool for like businesses, but who really wants a clear TV in their house? Like to me, it seems like there's more downside than upside to that. But none of that kind of stuff this year. I haven't even seen the same clear TVs here this year. Like they're not even showing them off anymore. There's a couple like flying car techs. There was a flying motorcycle, like a two-wheel motorcycle that has like the four like drone propellers, like a quadcopter motorcycle that looked really interesting. I mean, it kind of looks like a death trap because like the blades are like really like right at face level. Like if somebody wasn't paying attention, it looked like they could walk right into the blades. You know, they had that. They had the Xpeng car that looks like a giant van, but out of the back of the van is like a little personal drone that you can fly around. They have that here, which is really, really cool to see. Obviously, they're not flying them. They're just showing them on the expo floor, but really, really cool to see that kind of stuff in person. But all of it feels so much like concept still, right? It feels like, oh,
Right.
that's really, really cool. You can do that. But it's so far off from actually being anything anybody's actually going to use in real life.
It's crazy that the tangible stuff is AI.
Yeah.
it's like you had told me 10 years ago that the tangible stuff at a CES was the AI stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
What are you talking about? It was always the AI stuff that was just like, oh yeah, that's cute. It doesn't actually work. None of it works.
What I want to know is when you were coming to CES, let's say 15 years ago, did they have like flying car concepts and stuff back then? Because I feel like they probably did. It was just a little more archaic than what we're seeing now.
No, there was no flying car stuff. You know, actually, I helped put a video game system in the back of a Toyota Prius concept car in partnership with Alcatel-Lucent. I was doing this startup called Game Streamer at the time. And so a lot of it was that kind of stuff. It was like, you know, and it was kind of gimmicky. It's like, you got a car. Okay, now there's a game system in the back of the car. A lot of it was that kind of stuff.
Most of the cars that you see here feel like concepts that we may never see. Some of them I think are actually on the roads. Like they like Wemo is here. That like you can take a look at what the Wemo cars are. But if you go to San Francisco, you could literally order one up and take a ride in one. So they have that here. Zoox is here, which is like Amazon's Amazon owned self-driving car company. Honda showed off some like cool EV self-driving cars. One of them almost looks like a Lambo, which is really, or like maybe like a Lotus, like a cross between like a Lotus and a Lambo or something, which is really, really interesting. Honda's kind of going down that path a little bit.
Before we wrap up here, I wanted to like go back to Nvidia for a second, because there was one thing that I heard Nvidia talking about that I didn't hear you mention. I think maybe it's kind of hard to understand, so I'm still trying to process like what exactly it means. But you know, Jensen talked about with this new graphics card, the way that they're able to achieve so much better performance, partially is because they're using AI for a lot of the processing.
Right.
And my understanding was he was saying almost like 90% of the processing of like the graphics was being given to AI. It sounds fascinating if that's actually working. Like, I mean, are they literally just like kind of like outlining the polygons and things like that, then having the AI fill in all the other details?
He was talking about how it's really interesting because the GeForce graphic cards led to being able to create AI, and now he's using AI to be able to create better and better graphics cards. And I remember him kind of going down that rabbit hole a little bit. But you know, my understanding is like, did you hear about like the Switch 2, the rumors that have dropped around the Switch, the Nintendo Switch 2? So basically what they're saying about the Nintendo Switch 2 is that they're expecting it to be announced in 2025, and they're expecting it to be able to play games in 4K, but you're not going to be actually creating games in 4K. You're going to be the game developers are going to be basically creating games in 720p or 1080p or whatever to keep the file sizes small enough to fit on a cartridge. And then the Switch itself is going to upscale it to 4K and sort of like essentially guess the pixels in between to scale it up to 4K. So my understanding of like what Nvidia is doing is kind of that same kind of concept, is that it can take, you know, less data and then imply the rest of the information using AI. Right. So this is a really oversimplification, and I don't totally understand it, but that's sort of my understanding, is that it can actually work with less information and then imply and use AI to figure out the gaps. And that's sort of how it's going to work. But again, I'm not an engineer, and so I'm not the person to explain that.
That makes sense to me. But like the way he said it made it sound like it's almost hard coded into the hardware, which was kind of surprising to me. Like he made it sound like this chip actually does that. Like you don't actually have to do anything different with the game code to make that work. That the chip itself is doing it in real time. And I was like, if that's true, that is that is mind boggling, because like you could potentially like really scale up graphics in games if you're getting like a 10, an order of magnitude improvement from the AI. We're gonna see games that look you're walking around the real world, like real world.
Yeah, I don't think we're far off from that already. I mean, I think
Yeah. But now with this, well, I mean, we'll probably be there in like in a year or two. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it might require like the 5090 or something like that to get that level of realism, but I bet you the 5090 will get you there,
Yeah. You have to make it look pretty good, but then the AI fills in the gaps to make it look better. Like in theory, if that's what they're really doing. Right. So
yeah, well, I guess when you think about it, right, we've already got things like, let's say, like Runway's video to video, right, where you can give it one video and then it can go and sort of reskin that video and make it look like a completely different video, but still looks good. Like that's probably what it's going to do, right? Like you give it a video that looks pretty good. Like you get something out of Unreal Engine 5 right now, it looks pretty damn good, right, already. Now imagine it sort of reskinning it, but with like a upscaled 8K realism filter on it.
Right.
And now that Unreal Engine game looks indistinguishable from something that was just shot on a video camera.
Right. Imagine you're gonna go back and remaster like old games or old movies or anything too, and just like make them look super badass.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt it, right? Like there'll probably be systems where you can take your old VHS tapes, run them through, and then upscale them to 4K.
Yeah, make it look, add some like cinematic stuff to it too, lighting and other stuff, and just like, yeah, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like with all of this AI stuff, once it gets cheap enough that it's like anybody can use it, anybody can do whatever they want with it, like
that's gonna get so
weird.
weird.
That is on the table.
That's getting so weird. Like, one thing that they do in Asia for weddings that I don't know if they do it in America, maybe like at fancy weddings they do. I don't know. I don't think it's normal in America. But in Asia, it's very normal. At least I know it's normal in Japan that when you have a wedding, you have somebody filming the wedding, and at the same time, people are editing the videos during that time period. So by the time you're done with the wedding, they present to you a really nicely edited video of the day in movie format. So they try to present it like it's a movie, like your wedding day was a movie.
Yeah,
and they show it to everybody.
I've heard of that kind of thing, but yeah, I don't think it's very common.
And there's always like tears. Everyone's all like emotional about it because they make it so cinematic. Like, oh my God, look what this moment that we were all part of today. It's like, God, you're gonna have that for like your life. That's gonna be so weird. Like take all the like the videos of your life and have AI automatically edit it into this kind of like master film of your life. That's
that job that you just mentioned is going to get way easier for the people doing it, right? Because they're just going to feed it all of the video, and then AI is going to figure out how to edit it into like a cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, and they'll be able to make it better, right? Add cinematic lighting in the right spots, editing in the right spots, tie it all together with the right narrative. Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah,
Anyways.
We're entering a wild world. Every year I go to CES. Every year, this is my second year at CES. So every time I come to CES, the last few years I've come to CES, and like it definitely like expands my mind into what's possible. Right, it makes you go, oh crap! I didn't know that was, we were able to do that yet. I didn't know we were capable of that kind of thing yet.
Well, yeah, I was still surprised by what Jensen said about them predicting the different parts of the game, if that's what they're really doing in hardware, because he had been saying that like, hey, we're eventually going to use AI to generate all the pixels.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, that sounds kind of far fetched. Maybe that's like a 5-year kind of thing. That sounds really hard. I don't know. I'm not like a hardcore engineer. I don't know.
There's already been demos of that, right? Isn't that kind of what Google's
but that stuff's not playable. Like it looks cool.
No,
but
I'm not saying it's playable yet, but I feel like we've already seen glimpses of it, right?
Right. But if they're actually already doing it where it's like a hybrid approach where it's actually working today, if that's really what he's saying, like I really want to learn more about that and like see if that's really what's going on. But if that's happening, that's going to change, so many things with like gaming, entertainment, movies.
Yeah, like I'm just looking forward to the day too, where like I can record like as a YouTuber, right? Like I can record YouTube videos at 720p, right? Yeah. Edit the whole video at 720p because it's a hell of a lot faster to edit and render at 720p than it is at 4K, right? Create my whole video at 720p, render it out, toss it on YouTube, and then YouTube just upscales it to 4K for me. Like, we're like that close to that. I think YouTube's already testing AI upscaling. I think that's what's going to happen with pretty much all videos eventually. It's like you're going to be able to watch any video, whether it was recorded in 480p all the way up to 4K if you wanted to. It might, miss some of the details because it's basically trying to guess what was in the pixels in between. And so sometimes it's not going to be perfect, but I think we're going to get to a point where we can record and edit our videos at 720p and then post-process them up to 4K, and it'll look like the whole thing was filmed in 4K. And I'm excited about that. I think that'll make video creation a lot easier. Cool, man. Cool. Well, this has been really fun. I know we actually came into this one not knowing if we had enough to talk about, and I think this is actually a pretty solid episode, all said and done. But that's kind of been my experience with CES this year. If I was to sort of recap it, it's like slightly underwhelming this year. Like, I don't feel like between last year and this year there was major leaps. And what I have seen a lot of is like AI blended with Internet of Things, a lot of self-driving tech. And other than that, it's more of the same as last year, like AI and everything. We've got barbecues that have AI. We've got bird feeders that have AI. We've got, I was talking to like a Synology who makes like network attached, storage solutions, right? They're putting AI in those now, right? So it's like existing companies adding AI in, Internet of Things blended with AI, and a lot of self-driving tech, which relies on AI. So, I mean, CES is really, really AI focused again, but still it feels like a whole year has gone by since the last CES, but it doesn't feel like the advancements were as big as I thought they would be in that time frame.
A lot of it sounds
how I would summarize CES this year.
a lot of it sounds gimmicky. It's like, in Japan, you have a lot of that right now too, because in Japan, there's a huge AI fever, and you see that they'll like when I bought my washer and dryer, it had a big sign AI. I talked to my wife, and it's like, wait, so just like the fact that they're like, determining that it's still wet, they're calling that the AI, that is, And I was like, did the models do that a few years ago in Japan? Yeah, they already did that. And so it's like, so what? They've just kind of attached AI onto it to say like, yeah, this is the new AI feature. But the Nvidia stuff sounds amazing though, like especially if they are doing the thing I said, the hardware of predicting pixels and things like that.
I'll know more tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm spending all day with Nvidia. I'm actually meeting up with the Nvidia crew at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, and
of course Jensen's coming on.
Oh yeah, we'll get Jensen on eventually. I actually don't think Jensen's going to be there tomorrow, unfortunately.
Okay,
but I will know more about what Nvidia is doing tomorrow because I'm going to be like I'm getting hands-on demos with a lot of their new tech tomorrow. So maybe there's a follow-up episode to this one where we go deeper into what Nvidia is up to. And if you want to stay looped in, you want to learn more about what I find out from Nvidia and more about what I come across at CES and learn about some of these other tools that Nathan's been sort of teasing us about, but not going into very much detail yet, make sure that you subscribe to this show wherever you subscribe to podcasts. YouTube is the visual platform. We're sharing a lot of stuff on our screens, but we're also available wherever you listen to your podcasts. So give us a subscribe, and thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.